everyone, this is Steve Weintraub with Collider, and we are here at the Cinema Center at the Toronto International Film Festival. I want to give a huge thank you to Range Rover Sport for being our sponsor and enabling us to cover the movies here, like the documentary, The Last Republican. How are you guys doing?
Good, thanks, Steve. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
I really want to start with the documentary is fantastic, and I really think everyone watching should be seeking it out when it eventually comes out. But before we get started with everything, I really just want to say thank you for your service.
Oh, thanks.
And thank you for putting country before party and everything else.
Thank you. Listen, I've always said, I always thought that people that went into politics went in to do the right thing. And so, you know, you always have to make political compromises, but I always thought there was a red line people wouldn't cross. And I've learned that that's not always the case. And so thanks for saying it. And I'd encourage anybody that has their own personal red line and an interest in politics, get involved, because we need good people.
Is it a little bit? I have plenty of questions for you, but
I'm used to this.
Is it a little bit weird to have Democrats cheering for you?
No, it isn't, because over time, I mean, I guess at the beginning, yes, you know, when all this kind of started, a little bit. But what I've come to realize is, you know, look, yes, there's stuff we disagree on. We've disagreed on the same things for 100 years. And God willing, in the year 2124, we'll be probably disagreeing on the same things if we can survive this moment. And so, you know, we've built this really what I called an awkward alliance between the sane right, the sane center, and the left to defend democracy. And so for the last couple of years, it's actually felt kind of natural. You know, I go out and I realize the Democrats, at least nowadays, are more pro-national defense than the Republicans are. I've always been a big defense guy, you know, and supporting Ukraine. And so it actually has kind of been a natural fit, and I've enjoyed it.
I truly don't understand how Russia has invaded our country in such a way where the idea of defending Ukraine is something that people are debating over.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is the most basic American thing, really, that, you know, if a country, especially a small country like Ukraine, fighting for its independence is invaded by one of our chief adversaries, we're going to support them. Nobody's calling for putting American troops on the ground, of course. But look, we have a lot of great equipment that can be used to defend Ukraine. And the fact that half of the GOP, you know, and it's unfortunately a growing number, has said, we just want to walk away. That isolationism, to me, is so foreign to anything the Republican Party ever stood for, that there's a natural alliance now between the Democrats and somebody like me, because defense has always been my big thing.
Last thing before we get into the documentary. Do you think if Trump loses the election this year, the cult of Trump could fade? Or do you think that he is sort of just this... not to say is it until he dies, that the cult is just going to be there?
Look, I think, yes, it could die as a cult after this. I also think it was really close to dying after January 6th. And there were a number of things that happened that resurrected it. So the question is, what do the leaders, not me, but what do the leaders of the Republican Party do after Trump loses? Do they determine that Trump still holds the purse strings and they need the money, so they're going to just do what, frankly, Kevin McCarthy did at Mar-a-Lago and reanimate the guy? Or are they going to actually stand up? I don't have a lot of faith that they're going to stand up, but I hope they do. And look, Donald Trump, I think, will be done as a political entity. The real question is, does Trumpism continue? Is there somebody that learned his tactics that maybe even better than him at it that can come in and inherit that? Or does kind of the spirit, we'll call it the spirit of Ronald Reagan, come back? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I think DeSantis and some others tried it, but no matter what you think about Trump, he has the charisma.
He does. He does. He has a superpower, and nobody. If you don't fall into his orbit, you don't understand his superpower. But I will tell you, somebody that's met with him a number of times, he's very charming in person. He's funny. He actually would be great, not in politics, but somewhere else. But the problem is he's tearing the country down with him.
And let's face it, his show has jumped the shark, right? There's that show, like, we know when the show jumps the shark. And so, like, even like the thing that you're saying he's good at, and you're right about that in terms of his ability to have this extraordinary cult of personality in television. Yeah, it's like season, I don't know, what season are we on?
Too many.
And now he's like, hey, I know, I'll get on a motorcycle and I'll jump a shark. Like, that's where we're at with him too. So I think people are getting I think people are feeling that, because when you jump the shark in a TV show, it's organic. It's not like people, right? People don't stop liking the show for no reason. They stop liking the show because the show jumped the shark, right? So they're like, ugh, this show. Oh my God.
He has said in the last week some pretty crazy things. And I just pray that we are at the end of his reign of terror over our country.
Let me give you some hope real quick on that. I've always heard that the crazy movements, they glow really brightly before they either overtake everything or they collapse into nothing. And this could be a moment where it's glowing so brightly that it just collapses into nothing afterwards.
Yeah, I pray you're right. So let's jump into the doc.
I'm sorry, Blade Runner reference. You just did the best Blade. This is Collider.
Thanks,
the best
man.
Blade Runner reference. Where he says, he goes, Roy. He's right. He says, the flame that burns twice as bright.
I'm in the business now, buddy.
You are.
I'm in the business.
The flame that burns twice as bright burns half as long, and you've burned so very bright, Roy.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So Trump, you're toast.
I did not think that this interview was going to bring up Blade Runner, and it's amazing because the headline of the interview could be "The Last Republican Talks Blade Runner." You know what I mean? Like literally, I'm sort of joking and sort of not.
You're considering it. Well, it's your.
I'm thinking about it right now. So, okay, jumping in, you guys are polar opposites when it comes to your. It's like liberal Democrat, conservative Republican. How the F did you two connect to work together to make this doc?
Well, I mean, I'm a comedy director, right? So like most of my, most of my life is surprise, right? It's subversion of expectation. I'm also a political junkie. So when I was looking at Adam's career and what he did to sacrifice his career and his social circle and at personal risk to his family to stand up against Trump and his party in the wake of Jan 6, I was like, that's like the greatest subversion of expectation in the history of American politics I've ever seen, right? And so I was like, there's a story there. And I really admired him, frankly. And I thought that, to be able to make a film and go to him and make a film to tell his story was something I just had to do. And
so my wife, Sophia, and I, we were like, hey, this is such an important time in our lives. Like, we're never going to be able to describe this moment to people. I hope this is the most historic thing we'll ever live in our life. And, we had a lot of people come wanting to make a documentary. It was all about like the horse race of politics, though. Are you going to run again? Can you win? And I wasn't interested in that. And I knew I probably wasn't going to run again. To me, the story is the human impact of doing the right thing. And they showed, Steve's like, that's his interest in it is it's not as much can you win re-election. It's, what is the cost of standing up and doing the right thing? And one thing we learned in the process of this very quickly is that, yeah, we have political differences, but it really doesn't matter. Like, as I'll say this, like, you don't have to go be a friend with an insurrectionist, okay? But if somebody just has a different political viewpoint from you, the fact that you would limit who you can be friends with because they have a different philosophy on government, we're just limiting ourselves in potential friendships. And I've always said, and recently I've actually come to realize, I'm actually glad Steve thinks differently from me because we can kind of rip on each other. We make fun of each other. I call him a lefty communist. He calls me a righty, fascist.
We have a meeting hall at least. Like, you don't even have a parking spot anymore. You're like, you have no parking spot.
Yeah, I'm out of my club.
Yeah,
so,
I'm like, welcome. They're like, welcome. Yeah. You should come over. We have great parties.
That's what's nice is being able to kind of rip on each other and respect each other. And I hope that comes out in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear. I did not want to do this documentary at first. Like the idea of having to, I was like, wait, he's a conservative Republican. How am I going to deal with that? And I had to reconcile that in my head as part of making the film.
We should also bring up the importance of Hot Tub Time Machine and all this.
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know that. I was like, I'm going to make an important, hopefully important, very serious political documentary feature. And I'm following him through the garage, thinking to myself, I'm an important, documentary,
everybody
filmmaker
around
now.
me feels important.
Yeah, that's right.
Normal.
Yeah, you're just like and he goes, oh, by the way, I loved Hot Tub Time Machine. Out of nowhere, when I was just following him up to his apartment with a camera, and I was so disarmed by that because up until that point we'd had a very kind of formal relationship, right? And I'm like, you're a political figure, you're a lawmaker. I'm in DC. It's just a very serious environment. And he said that, and in that moment, I was really disarmed by it and thought, well, then we have a lot of common ground. right? Like if he loves Hot Tub Time Machine, he seemed to really love it too. It wasn't just like, oh yeah, I saw your movie, it was cool. He was like, man, I'm
I
telling
quote it quite a bit.
Yeah.
To him. Yeah.
And I was like, wow, he actually really loves that movie. What's that tell me about him? And from there, because we shared like at least a sense of humor, everything else after that was easy.
Well, I was just going to say, it's funny because they told me right when I got into politics 13 years ago, once you mention politics, people's humor goes away. And it's true. I mean, I see it all the time because politics isn't a funny thing, obviously. But what we came to realize is you always think if you're on the right, you're like, well, the left has no sense of humor. If you're on the left, you're like, the right has no sense of humor. And you come to realize there actually is very common sense of humor, and that can unite us.
Yeah. I wear a lot of T-shirts, and I'm always wearing a Step Brothers T-shirt.
Yes, I love Step Brothers
and,
too.
the greatest.
And it's Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly in that pose where they're taking a photo. And no matter everywhere I go in any part of the world, people lose their minds.
It is.
You know, my wife's name is Pam. And so once a month, once a month I send her the clip where they're interviewing for a job and they can't say the interviewer's name, Pam.
Two M's.
Pam, is it Palm? It's Palm with is there an L? There's an L? Yeah, I send it to her. I send it to her once a month. She's thrilled about that.
I'm sure she
loves it.
Loves it.
Every single time I send it, she's just delighted.
So I love talking about editing because it's where it all comes together, especially in a documentary. So how long was your first cut of this movie?
It took a while. I would say it was probably 9 months till we had a cut that we liked. We had, of course, several cuts we didn't like, but Ted Feldman, our editor, is an extraordinary editor because we were telling a present tense story, right, in terms of the verite, and during the period in which we followed Adam, through his congressional life and his life at home. They were having a baby, right? So when we started, Sophia was like 7 months pregnant and like on the wing of a plane, which is their station wagon from DC to Illinois. And then we had archival, right? We had to tell the broader story. And then we had, the kind of hero interview. So we had to kind of put all that together, and it took a while to figure out how to shape it. And then it finally all came together. And then the other thing was, I wasn't supposed to be in the film originally. I know that's shocking sounding, but I really wasn't. I was not a character in the film. I wasn't an off-screen character. But what emerged in the editing room actually is that we had this really funny banter. I didn't really notice it when we were shooting. I was just focused on trying to capture the story I was telling. And then when we were in the editing room, the editor did a string out. It was like 90 minutes of all of our sparring, which I just never really thought about it. And, I was like, if I think it's genuinely funny, then maybe I'll put it in the film as a framework. And I did, and some of it's on the cutting room floor, but I was like, I couldn't deny it at that point. And I really felt like, well, maybe that's what the movie's about in a way I hadn't thought of.
Did you ever have a cut that was like 2.5 hours or 3 hours? Or
oh yeah, all my cuts were like 3. Yeah, it's like they all just too long.
When I say something like that, I mean like, did you have a cut that was 2.5 that you're like, oh, I don't know how we're getting shorter than this?
No, I mean, because I'm in comedy, I'm pretty tough on my cuts. I'm pretty tough on the movies. I want them to be watchable. I feel like every story has, the time it takes the story, like a movie can be any length. And the time it takes you to tell that story should be the length of that movie, but it shouldn't be longer, right? And so, I felt like this movie was living in and around the same running time as my comedies. I felt like 90 minutes is a good, solid length to tell a political story. Like I guess if he had traveled around the world, maybe it would have been longer, right? If we were following him around the world and there were chapters in many countries across great adventures or something like that. But we were in DC and we were telling a simple story about his personal life, and so I felt
we had many days they followed us in places that were cool that never made the cut, and that's when I realized though, like, it's probably a pretty hard job to edit. I mean, I've never done it, but like, yeah, that's, we had some good stuff that, they followed, but it's like, it just didn't make it into the narrative of the story.
Yeah.
So we'll come out with The Last Republican again, part 2.
Exactly.
What was it like for you? Did you watch any of the early cuts, or did you purposely only want to see it when he had a cut that he was very happy with?
I really only saw what he was happy with. Now, occasionally they actually put together a funny kind of montage of A to the MF and K, like to the song, where I was doing some stuff.
Yeah,
They
Cypress
thought,
Hill song?
yeah, Cypress Hill song that they thought might make it in, didn't make it in the movie, and they sent me that. So I would see like some of those kinds of things, or he showed me the footage of, we had one where Sophia was helping me put on a bow tie. It didn't make it in the cut, but it was pretty fun, pretty cool. And
Yeah, they
so
like looked up a YouTube video.
because I don't know how to tie a bow tie. And,
Yeah,
Who actually knows that?
nobody. YouTube, that's who knows.
But they looked it up and then they figured out how to do it together. And
she
it
did a
was
good
an
job.
amazing scene.
Yeah, but so I saw some of that, but no, I didn't see the final version until the final version, and it was just like breathtaking. I mean, honestly, we even saw another screening yesterday on the big screen, and I mean, tears for me are flowing the whole time because it's just such a personal thing to see your life on the screen.
Well, I can't imagine what it's like to watch this with like an audience.
Yeah, amazing. Really was I mean, to have people there, when they showed Christian, our son, being born, and you hear people like kind of go, aw, you realize like they're invested in our lives now, and that it feels funny and it's great at the same time. And the standing ovation at the end is just, it's humbling. It's, I'm probably have some arrogance in me, sure, but I'm not generally an arrogant person, but it's like, wow, they're standing up and clapping for both his work, but also what we did. It's amazing.
Yeah. So you see the movie. Was there anything that you actually said, can we not include this?
No, there wasn't. I mean, it's uncomfortable for me to watch, the scene where Tucker Carlson goes after me for crying, right? And, that's tough for me to watch because it never bothered me, but I look at it and I'm like, what a jerk he is, right? To like, this idea that masculinity means you can't be in touch with your emotion is the opposite, frankly, of what masculinity should be. And so those things are hard to watch, but I thought it was important to leave in the movie because people need to see the impact, the stuff that happens to you. So no, there was no part of the movie I watched where I'm like, gosh, can you take that out? Or I wish that wasn't there. I'm sure they had some things that I probably wouldn't have wanted in there, but that never made it in.
What do you think? You obviously spent a lot of time in Washington, and I'm just curious, what do you think would surprise people to learn that you learned like about the behind the scenes in Washington? And for you, what do you think would surprise people? Like same question for both of you, but you both have different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd never been to DC. Certainly, I'd never been given access to the world of Congress, and I would say mainly the staff. I mean, there are just hundreds and thousands, it seems like, of young congressional staffers, young people who are really, really hardworking, who do the work every single day to run Washington. That was astounding. It was like a factory town of really, really committed people making Washington. I mean, because these lawmakers are so they're lazy. They do it. They get to walk around. They get to walk around with a cool pin, and they go anywhere they want. They're like rock stars, and like there's a lot of work going on all the time. I was also. And it's just a funny thing that I know we haven't talked about this yet, but I was like, what the hell's happening? You go into the congressional office, right? And there's staffers and he has a great staff and they were really, really cool. And that was just a great experience in itself. But there's a loud buzzer that goes on. I don't know if people know this. Okay, so you're in the middle of a conversation, right? Hey, Adam, thanks, whatever. What are you doing today? What do you have? And you'll hear this. And I was like, what the fuck is that? Like, it was terrifying. And he was like, oh shit, I got to go vote. Like, there's votes happening on the floor all the time, or it seemed very frequently. And the way there's a vote going on, I don't know how old that buzzer is.
It's got to be 100 years old, at least 150. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's a mechanical buzzer. It's not electronic, and it's really, really loud, and it's just signaling a vote. Is that what it is?
Yep.
And so I had no idea. So of course, in the middle of shooting,
everybody thinks we're getting attacked.
Yeah, or it was a fire alarm.
Yeah.
Like you just have no, and it's just to go and vote. So I don't know. I thought that was a really kind of interesting way in which lawmakers were called to the floor.
And I would say the two things that I think would surprise people is, yes, the staff. That's the answer. I mean, the staff. But since he already gave it, the other thing would be members of Congress. I don't know if you can tell this a ton in my show. Mainly because I've got security around me and I'm riding with security, but we drive our own cars, we walk, we do our own stuff, and people just see it's us living our regular life there.
I'm basically being given the signal I'm out of time, but I just real fast. Do you think Ted Cruz can actually lose?
I would love it. God, please, can Ted Cruz lose? I hope so. We live in Texas.
I haven't been following. Is it close?
Yeah, it's close.
It's
within 2 points.
I was going to say within striking distance.
Yep.
Yes,
I know Colin Allred. I served with him in the House. I think he can. I hope he does. It's going to be really hard because it's Texas, but Ted Cruz should be nervous.
Yeah, Ted Cruz is a fucking asshole.
Yeah, he is.
Sorry for saying
He
that.
is.
Like, I mean, I
Amen.
despise that fucking man.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God.
He's such a charlatan.
It's unbelievable. And also, all the leaders in Texas and Florida can go fuck themselves. I'm sorry for I'm finally just showing my true colors. I can't support either state. They're just insane. And what's crazy, I'm just going to rant,
No,
but
do
what's
it.
crazy
Go.
is these people keep voting for these Republicans in power who are trying to take away liberties or like, I just don't understand it.
I don't either.
Like, it's crazy.
Yep.
Sorry,
It
I
is.
didn't mean to do
No,
that.
no, I'm with you all the way.
Like, it's crazy. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Sorry for cursing.
No, is
Feel
that how you're
very-
going to end?
What?
I think you should end this just going to your rant with "it's crazy" and then just go to your card. And then just go.
No.
I don't know if you have like a hard cut with music to Collider.
no, I wanna
It's
act-
like it's fucking crazy. Card.
I want actually a real question. Do you see yourself, and I'm sure you've been asked this on CNN and other places, but do you see yourself wanting to go back to politics as like an independent, staying as a Republican? Like, what do you view your future?
So I don't know. I mean, look, I'm actually enjoying this side of it right now and talking to people and sharing stuff. Is there a day I could go back in? Maybe. I don't know where I belong right now. That's the other thing. I mean, unfortunately, in America, the politics is so focused on you've got to have a place in the party. Do I have a place in the Democratic Party? That's a question for the Democrats. Do I have a place in the Republican Party? Not today. So yeah, I mean, the fire is starting to come back a little bit. I just don't know what role it's going to be, and stay tuned. We'll see.
I'll talk to some of my people. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'll talk to some of the Dems. You know, we'll chop it up. You know,
I by the way, I really wanted to talk about the DNC and you getting to speak, but I'm out of time, so it'll be down the road. I'm just going to say seriously, congrats on the
Thank
doc.
you.
Thank you.
Again, thank you for standing up for country. I can't say enough thank yous, and thank you for making this, and have a fantastic fest.
Yeah,
thanks
you
for having
too.
us.
Thanks.